Hello, welcome back to Rue's Astro Workshop. A good friend of mine popped by the other day and gave me some books which he'd acquired from an old chap who had passed away, an old engineer, and he asked me if I'd like them, and I said yes, of course I would. And in the box there were some really interesting things. First of all, there's this really nice copy which is in absolutely immaculate condition. You can see the gold edges are all still intact. It's got no greasy thumbprints in it. And it's a 9th edition version of the Machinery's Handbook, which, if you look inside, is 1937. So, very interesting for a number of reasons. In the respect that, you know, it's the first thing that I noticed about it. I mean, I've got the 29th edition, so it's quite so considerably further on than this. But the nice thing about this one is that it's actually quite easy to read. You can actually read the values in it. The more up-to-date ones, and there's a lot of tables here, but let's get something you can actually read, something along these lines. I can actually read that without putting glasses or magnifying glasses or that sort of thing on. So it is actually quite good in that respect. As I say, it's in immaculate condition. It's not got thumbed corners or anything wrong with it, so that's really, really nice to have. I shall use it. And although it's obviously all in Imperial, but it's still got some very useful information in it. So that's a nice one for the bookshelf. So the other thing that was in there that I found very interesting were a couple of editions of a magazine called Practical Mechanical and Electrical Engineering. There are two copies of it. Both concept. It's a weekly magazine, and this was August the 13th, 1954, and this one is Friday the 20th of August, 1954. So all there was in the box, just these two, and they're both on consecutive weeks. It's a really good magazine. It's a shame that it still doesn't exist, but what drew me was a couple of articles in there about. Here we go. We've got a helper. Hello, that's very good. Yes, your help is thank you very much for coming to help. This is Sherbet. So Sherbet's going to get down now because he's got wet, muddy feet, which I don't want on this magazine. But it's got some really interesting little. For such a short little magazine, there was things that caught my eye, which I've really enjoyed, and I thought I'd sort of draw your attention to some of the things that are in here because they may be of interest to you as well. Let me see if I can turn the page. I've got the camera in one hand, which is always not a good way of doing things. This was an interesting article. This is an article about how to make screw gauges, and what it discusses is the fact that in a factory environment, you obviously will buy a screw gauge if you're making an item with threads in it. You'll buy go no-go gauges for cutting threads. But obviously, if you're just doing one-off larger sizes, then it's very expensive to buy gauges. And obviously, a lot of the threads I do are for a telescope, so they're quite big with fine threads. Now, if you were to go out and buy gauges for all of those, it wouldn't be worth doing any of the thread cutting yourself because you just have to buy so many. So I commonly make my own thread gauges. So this article is actually really interesting because it covers some of the things you need to look out for and how you should measure. There's things about using wires and such like here, and the materials that you should make them from so that they remain accurate and durable. So that was an interesting article. Now the next one that caught my eye was one that let me just go through and see if I can find it. Oh, this one here. So this article caught my eye, and I think it might be of interest to people like Adam Booth, who've got shapers, but it shows how you would broach a slot or something in a larger item. But this is showing you how to broach holes in very small items like bushings and things. So what they've done here is they've constructed an overarm, it's almost like a hacksaw which supports the arbor, which allows you to slot a small bushing. So I thought that was quite interesting. So the next thing that drew my eye, there's a couple more. That's all about jet engines. Where was the other thing? Oh, there was a couple of things actually. One is at the back, and this might not be of interest to you guys, but I found it quite interesting, was an advert. So this is another thing that caught my eye, was an advert in the back for a Progress #1 drilling machine, which is exactly the same as the old machine that I had. It had the same table, desktop style. And what caught my eye was the cost of it. £48.15, and that it didn't include the chuck. The chuck was an extra £1.17 and sixpence. So pretty expensive. I only paid £90 for mine, which was obviously a nice machine, and wish I hadn't sold it. I did sell it for a lot more than 90 quid. I can't remember exactly what I sold it for. I think it was about 150, 160, and I had repaired it. Yeah, it was an expensive drilling machine in its day. The last thing that caught my eye in here, which I thought was quite interesting, was let me see if I can find it now. This little bit here. It says, oh, this one here. Look, let me see if I can get you in on this. Here, I'll read it out to you. It says, "World water speed record attempt. Using a boat of tubular steam framework, Mr. Donald Campbell is to make an attempt on the world water speed record at present held by Stanley Sayers of America, with a speed of 178 miles per hour. The all-steel framework of the hull has been manufactured at the Oldbury factory of Ackles and Pollock Limited to the design and specification laid down by Mr. Campbell and his engineers. Mr. Campbell hopes that the boat, powered by a single Vickers jet engine, will be capable of speeds beyond the 200 mile per hour mark." We all know how that ended up. So anyway, a little insight into what was going on in engineering in the 1950s, which I thought was really quite interesting. So look out for these practical, mechanical and electrical engineering magazines, because I think that they've got quite a lot to offer.